Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Shri Saraswatyai Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram. As seekers trying to strengthen or develop bhakti, one of the most important things we are told is that we must cultivate a relationship with Bhagavan. And whether that is a relationship of parent and child, of friends, whether it's a relationship of siblings, whatever that relationship might be, a relationship of master and servant, it is incredibly important and helpful for us to feel that Bhagavan is ours, whether that's as a master or a mother or father or friend, and also that we belong to Bhagavan. And that feeling comes when we are able to develop a strong relationship with God. Someone who demonstrated a beautiful relationship with Bhagavan in so many different ways throughout their life was a saint who was born in the year 1836 in the eastern part of India with the name Gadadhara. And he is someone who, from his childhood, developed, as many of these saints and devotees do, developed, or rather started to display, a very sort of sattvic temperament. He was not really interested in many of the usual things that children are interested in, but was often to be found in a very sort of contemplative, silent mood, and often also very sort of solitary in his behavior. He had older and younger siblings, and as he grew up, when he was in his teens, I think, he moved from his village with his elder brother to a mandir, because his brother worked as a priest. And the mandir that his brother went to sort of work at as a priest was a Kali mandir in a place called Dakshineshwar, which is now part of Kolkata. So now I'm sure as soon as we hear this, many of you will recognize who this particular person is, who, even though in his childhood was known as Gadadhar, that was his given name, later on became known as Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, and remains known to millions of devotees still today worldwide. So as I said, when he was still young, he moved with his elder brother to this Kali temple, where his brother was priest. And unfortunately, after a few years, his brother passed away. And as often happens when we experience the death of a loved one, particularly when it's unexpected, there is a particular feeling that comes over the mind of detachment or dispassion that makes us feel that certain things which we were previously so attached to or so interested in are no longer worth our time, are no longer worth our energy. And what we see in the life of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, that although many of us do experience this feeling of detachment, in his life and in his case, he sustained that feeling. Because for most of us, what happens is it comes and it goes. For him, this feeling translated into a longing to see the Divine Mother. Of course, he was seeing this physical form of hers in that temple every day. But he wanted to see her in the world. And as a result of this longing, this almost desperate longing to see Mother Kali, he began to perform great sadhanas. He began to perform great austerity also. He used to go to a very secluded place, which in fact everyone was very afraid of. It had a not so good reputation. He used to go there to meditate because he knew that he would get solitude. We often feel that, everybody around me is disturbing me too much. That's why I can't do my sadhana. So we also want to go to some jungle and do some sadhana. All that we need is to just find a quiet time. Because if you find the right time, then any place is quiet. And more importantly than that is to make our mind conducive. He didn't have anyone else around. He was living by himself. He was not taking care of any family at that time. So he had the liberty to go off and do his sadhana in this way. And so he began to practice. And as he practiced, this longing to see the mother intensified more and more. One day it got to a point where he was sitting in this mandir and he was looking at Mother Kali. And after all the practices that he had done, he felt that if I can't see you, then my life is not worth living. And for those of you who are familiar with the image of the goddess in this particular form, she holds various things in her arms. And one of the implements which she holds is a sword. And so he stood up from where he was sitting with this very strong feeling that my life is no longer worth living because I am not being granted a vision of my most beloved mother. And he went to take the sword to end his own life. And as he did so, he suddenly found that he was granted this darshan of Mother Kali in her most beautiful, adorable form. And in fact, he began to see Mother as all. And that is what he was longing for. That's what he was waiting for. And he began to experience after this, and in fact, it's said that even in his childhood, he used to become completely absorbed in this sort of thought or vision of God. Sometimes when we hear about these saints and devotees and we see that, they accomplish things which for us seem to take so much time, they accomplish it so quickly. And often in our study of Advaita, for example, we hear about figures such as Ramana Maharshi, who at such a young age was so wise and became enlightened at such a young age. And we feel that, there must be some reason that it's easy for them, and it's not the same for us. The same thing isn't possible for us. There's something special about them. But what we actually see is that it's the intensity of their desire and the purity of their desire and of their mind that allows this accomplishment to take place. And so rather than becoming disheartened, when we see it in this way, then it becomes all the more encouraging and inspiring. And we recognize that it's also possible for us. Because as Bhagavan says in the Gita very clearly, that nothing we do goes to waste. Every sadhana that we perform, the effects of, or the results of those sadhanas, they remain with us, they stay with us. So Sri Ramakrishna was granted this vision of Mother Kali. And after that, he would continually be absorbed in the thought of Mother. But also he began to explore different things. And at one point it said that he was worshipping Bhagavan as Rama, as Sri Rama. And in order to do so, he adopted the attitude of Hanuman. So when we hear that he adopted the attitude of Hanuman, to us it means, okay, maybe he adopted Seva Bhava, maybe he, felt that he was offering service to the Lord. He was he had that kind of devotion, surrender, dedication. Very interestingly, in Sri Ramakrishna's life, what we see is he started to physically behave like Hanumanji. And people around at that time who saw him felt so shocked and really started to doubt that, is this person sane? Is there something wrong in his mind? Because he would act like a monkey and he would jump around and he would talk like a monkey and he would do all sorts of things. But all of it was because he wanted to simply be Hanuman so that he could be granted that vision of Sri Rama. And finally, it was said that he gained this darshan of Sitaji, who granted him this vision. At another time, he began to worship Shri Krishna, Bhagavan in his form as Shri Krishna. And there he adopted the attitude of a gopi. And so one of the things that he did is he got rid of all his clothes and he asked someone, please bring me women's clothes. I only want to dress like a gopi. So he took these clothes and he began to worship Bhagavan as a gopi. And with that attitude also, he gained this darshan of the Lord in this most beloved form of Shri Krishna. So we see that, in fact, in whichever relationship that he assumed with Bhagavan, he was able to have this darshan because none of these forms appeared different to him. All of them were equally as beloved as Mother Kali. So this is one most beautiful aspect of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsaji's life. When he started to live and behave in this way, the people around him became quite worried that this doesn't seem to be an ordinary person. And again, maybe there's something wrong. And so his family at home felt that maybe if he gets married, then he will have to sort of live with, another person. He will have to sort of regulate his behavior in a way that he's not doing at the moment. And so they decided to get him married. So he went back home and he got married to the person who later became known as Sharada Devi. Now, she was quite young when they got married, and as was the custom at that time, even though they got married young, she only went to live with her husband at a much later date. So they got married. Sri Ramakrishna returned to Dakshineshwar, to the Kali Mandir. And when Sharada Devi was 18 years old, she came also to live there. Their relationship, given what kind of person he was, but also the sort of person that she was, incredibly pure, incredibly simple in her life, also full of humility and devotion, and very dedicated to service. Their relationship also remained almost not even like a married relationship. Very sort of pure in that sense because of how they both were. So he also taught her various things, for example, how to do all the seva around the mandir and in the place where they were living, etc. And their relationship remained as one of two ideal, almost not even spiritual seekers, because he, really speaking, was not a seeker at that point, given everything that he had achieved. So his life, there is a lot more to sort of know and a lot more to learn. But his life was one of devotion and wisdom. And one thing in particular which we see in Sri Ramakrishna's life is his exploration of all the different paths. So he had a guru who taught him Advaita Vedanta, and very famously who advised him to move past the image of Mother Kali in his meditation to reach the formless. But he also had someone, for example, who advised him in Tantra. Not only different paths within Hinduism, but he explored different religions as well. And therefore, his firm conviction came to be that all paths are capable of leading one to the same destination. Regarding paths within the Hindu tradition, he thought that these three of duality, qualified non-duality, and non-duality, all were equally valid. And this is something that we try and understand today as well, that it's not that one is invalid or the others are invalid in the face of the validity of one, because each is required for people at the different stages in their life. When we are capable only of understanding difference and division, then duality is what we are capable of. Understanding that I and the truth are different. When we gain that purity and when we gain that maturity, then we are capable of understanding that actually I am one with that supreme truth. And as with all these saints, even after his realization of the non-dual truth, he continued to worship the mother in this particular form of Kali. That was something which he never dropped. And as seekers, it's the one thing which we are all too eager to drop. We feel that we are seeking the formless, and therefore, what need have we of this worship of God with form and with attributes? And in fact, in the lives of all saints, they always continue, this is what we see, that they continue their worship of God, even after the realization of that non-dual truth. Sri Ramakrishna in his life instructed two sort of groups of devotees. One were all the householders who used to come to him. And one was a group of young men who he prepared to pass on this tradition and knowledge of Dharma. And very famously, out of that group, one became Swami Vivekananda, and others also well-renowned in their, as devotees, in their reputation as devotees of Sri Ramakrishna, but also as teachers in their own right. And very beautifully, he offers advice to householders as to how we should live our lives. And he was very straightforward in saying that for a householder, one should perform one's duties, but one should never lose sight of Bhagwan in the performance of those duties. And he gives various examples to convey this point. For example, he says, just as someone who works in a household as a maid or as a servant, that person treats that house as their own in order to get everything done and to get everything, for example, cleaned, to do the cooking. And yet, as they're doing everything, always in the mind, this understanding is there that this is not mine. He gives another beautiful example. Some of you may know there is this fruit called jackfruit, right? And it grows sort of quite a big size. But it's notoriously difficult to sort of cut up because it's incredibly sticky. And so when people want to prepare jackfruit, what they do is they will spread oil all over their hands and sometimes even sort of up to the elbow to make sure that, you know, nothing gets stuck. Nothing of that jackfruit gets stuck on the skin. So he says, just like someone who is cutting jackfruit spreads oil all over the arms and all over the hands, in the same way, one should transact in this world with the oil of devotion. And that way, we will never get stuck to anything. Otherwise, we form attachments, we form desires, we get stuck. And when we get stuck, it's incredibly difficult to move on. And on the spiritual path, we must keep moving forward. And so very beautifully, he gives this incredibly apt analogy of how to live in this world and to do everything that is required, and yet to remain untouched. There are various stories and examples which he used to give in this way, which help us to understand much better how to live in this world and how to think, but also how to think of God and how to develop our relationship with God. There is so much to learn from what he said, but there is also so much that can be learned from how he lived. There is a very famous incident. He became very ill towards the end of his life. And there is a very famous incident that is related in which he is asked, I think by Swami Vivekananda, who at that time was still Narendra, why can't you ask Mother Kali to relieve you of this illness? And having as much love for Narendra as he did, he said, yes, I will do as you say. And what he said is that, you know, every time I go into the temple and every time I stand in front of Mother, all those things disappear from my mind. And I feel that, how can I ask her for anything? How can I ask her to get rid of this illness for me? How can I ask her to cure me? So in this way, there is this beautiful relationship that we see between Sri Ramakrishna and Mother Kali, this inspiring, incredibly moving devotion and complete dedication, complete surrender to the Divine Mother. And hopefully we can learn a little bit from his life to inspire us in our own journey, in our own quest for bhakti, for devotion, to achieve the goal of life for ourselves. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.